Alrighty, so we have the lovely Tracy Malone, and I want to first welcome you, everyone listening to the Trauma to Triumph podcast. We are back in full effect, and we have the lovely Miss Tracy Malone with us today, and she's going to talk about a really amazing topic today. She's going to talk about the red flags. She's going to talk about the 10 questions that you want to ask or that you want to consider when dealing with a narcissist. And now we may not get into all 10 because as we go along, it may get a little in depth. But the goal is to get all 10 answered, or at least, shoot for it, aim for it. But Miss Tracy Malone is definitely an authority in the space. She's internationally recognized as an expert on emotional abuse and narcissistic abuse, personality disorder. She's a survivor, a thriver. She's yes, an author and founder of narcissisticabussupport.com, which is a global resource to empower victims of emotional abuse. And she's also an author of a book called Divorcing Your Narcissist. You can't make this shit up. And it is available on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and anywhere you can find books. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest, Tracy Malone, to our podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. I've been waiting to do this interview with you. So I'm just gonna go right into it. And actually, before I do shoot like straight for the gusto, if you wouldn't mind kind of giving some of the ladies your story for those who don't know, who maybe not familiar with your work yet, just letting them know like a little bit about your story and how you came into this work.
Well, I knew nothing about narcissistic abuse, but I always knew I had a crazy family, and never put the two pieces together. I had what the judge called the most tortured divorce in our town's history. Didn't know the word. No one ever said it. Then I wrote a book about that divorce, but then I dated somebody after the divorce, and that's when I learned the hard way. And once that happened, I realized, why me? And I'm like,
Mm,
travel through my history and go, oh my gosh, I was raised by a nest of narcissists. So go
mm.
our family vacation. So if a guy did it to me, oh, they'll be back. That's just part of life. Like that's how when you are sort of groomed as a child to abusive behaviors, that's what happens. And so that makes me more vulnerable. But I decided, how could I have been that old at that time and not known this? And nobody told me. So I said, I'm going to educate the world. And I started my website, my YouTube channel, and everything else.
That's so amazing. Yeah, that's usually how it happens. It's like you kind of fall upon this work. It's not like you go look at. No, I don't think anyone's like. I think I want to be a narcissistic abuse coach. That seems like a cool career to go into or
Yeah.
field to go into.
He's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to listen to trauma all day. Wee.
Right. So yeah, absolutely. You're usually called for this work in some type of way through your trauma, through your pain. But your trauma ends up being your thriver story and ends up being your transformation story. So that's really great. So I'm going to get it right into the questions then. So, just to kind of recap, we are talking about understanding the red flags, recognizing narcissistic abuse behavior early. So, we want to know these things so we can catch this behavior early. So, we can help any of you ladies prevent being in a narcissistic long-term relationship before you are in a long-term relationship with a narcissist. We want to help you avoid that at all costs. So the first question I have for you is, can you share with us some common red flags or warning signs that may indicate someone is exhibiting narcissistic behavior?
Sure. So, the obvious lack of empathy. Well, how do you know? How do you judge someone for the lack of empathy, right? So
Right.
it's like they aren't there for you. They're not listening to you. They didn't remember that, your uncle died and you have all this stuff. Instead,
Mm,
it's just like, what do you want for dinner? Instead of, are you doing okay? Like, not that's what you
mm,
see the lack of empathy is in things in your life. You had a big important meeting and they don't seem to remember or care. Those are the very superficial. It gets a whole lot worse as you get deeper into it, but that's a good warning in the beginning, right? Gaslighting is another one. And it's sort of, we're going to talk a lot more about gaslighting. I'll get into very
yes.
specific examples, but they're always a victim. Um,
Mm,
they are always right, and they
Mm,
never apologize, and they never honor boundaries. And so if we're
yeah.
looking at that as sort of like the baseline, and it could get 1,000, there's a million books on it, you can see 1,000 different things that you'll see. But I think it's more important for people to not only be on hyper vigilant to what the behaviors of this potential narcissist is, but how do they make you feel?
Mm,
If you are sitting here and you are walking on eggshells and afraid to go, what you just said really hurt me, then that's a sign, that is a red flag to you that you're not comfortable. You don't trust this person, that if you are vulnerable and say, that upset me, that they won't just boot you out of your life, right? So
exactly.
getting in touch with how you feel is if you're confused, you are probably with a narcissist, like again,
Mm,
hot, cold, you know, gotta have all your time, and then they're ghosting you and you're like, what's happening, right? So knowing those things, but feeling ignored, feeling unloved, feeling unsupported, and just sort of being blamed for everything, because gaslighting
mm,
ties into that. We'll get again into that later. But if you feel like you're always the bad guy, these are signs for you to go, I don't care if they're a narcissist or not, I actually have a rubber stamp that says narcissist. It doesn't matter what we call them. If you are feeling confused and walking on eggshells, we don't need a name for them. We need you
right.
out, because that's not how you want to feel.
Exactly. Exactly. You definitely hit it on the nail. And it's like, you just don't feel safe. Like from my experiences, you just feel like this is not a safe relationship to be in. I can't talk about my feelings.
Right?
And with that, this actually perfectly segues into my next question, which is, how do narcissistic traits differ from typical relationship challenges or conflicts? Because we know we all have conflicts in relationships. It just happens. It's a part of life. But what are some of the differences between having a conflict with a person who's not narcissistic versus someone who is?
Well, first of all, everybody after a certain age brings their own baggage into the relationship, right? The
Yes.
thing is that if we all have baggage and we find someone else and they've got baggage, we're going to work on it together. We're going to have compassion for, you don't like that thing because you had this experience. You don't like it when I come up from behind you and say boo because you were raped. Just like, if they hear those things or you're concerned and they honor them and they work with them and they have empathy for, oh, she doesn't like me when I do this because it triggers back to the horrific things that she's been through, right? It's learning and seeing those sort of things, right? It's
Yes.
having this empathy to work with each other. A narcissist is never going to be able to
Hmm.
work with you for those things. So that's the contrast, is somebody you're both working on. You might not do it right, but they're not like attacking you because you said, I don't like it when you did that, or can you not do that? You're setting a boundary and they're reacting in a very bad way, right? Again, it could be some of their baggage, but then you're
Right.
working on it together. A narcissist is blame. Blame you. It's your fault. You did this. Da, 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 da.
Hmm. Hmm.
Taking away your power because they're blaming you for everything. And so it's really, have you ever heard of Darvo?
No, I haven't.
So DARVO is an acronym, and I don't think it's unique to the narcissist abuse world, but it applies to us. It applies in many
Mm,
different relationships. So DARVO
okay.
stands for deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender.
Oh yes, I do. It came back to me now. There's so many different acronyms now in the narcissistic abuse world, so I lose track sometimes. But no, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes, ma'am.
Again,
Yes.
if they're going to attack you because you said you don't like something, and then I didn't say that, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, now you're talking about somebody you can clearly see. And that's the
Mm,
difference between a normal person, that we're working on it together. We have empathy, we make
right.
mistakes, we forgive, we move on. They don't blame you. And we'll get more into that when we get into the gaslighting, because gaslighting is a lot of blame as well.
Absolutely. And I also feel too, just to add to what you were mentioning, they'll either blame you or they'll minimize, everything that you say.
Uh,
So, it'll be like, oh, you're so sensitive, or, you're just, this and that. It's like, well, even if the person is sensitive, that's not the right way to go about it, because the person may feel the way they feel for whatever they whatever reason they feel it. And it's like, for someone to minimize your feelings, it basically shows that your feelings are not important and they're not valid, and it's invalidating. And so, either
Mhm.
way it goes, like you said, they'll either blame you or they'll invalidate you in some type of way. So, yeah.
Both of them
um
are bad. Anybody who's
Exactly. Either way, it's like either way you don't. Nobody wants to feel that way. Nobody wants to be blamed or invalidated. And you don't. You deserve more out of life. Period.
Mhm.
And the next question I have is: are there any specific patterns of behavior that tend to emerge early on in relationships that maybe we didn't pay attention to? Like we saw them, but either we ignored them or we weren't used to recognizing that behavior, so we really didn't know until like after the fact that we were being gaslighted or whatever the case may be.
Right, absolutely. So let's be really clear. So early learning, seeing something early with a narcissist is contrast to actually the behavior, because the
Mm.
cycle is idealized, devalue, discard. So the
Mm-hmm,
ideal
mm-hmm.
thing, sometimes called love bombing,
Right,
is
right.
you're the best thing in the whole world. You're not going to see it in the beginning. And the beginning could be 3 months, it could be
Mm-hmm.
3 days, or it could be 30 years before you see the crazy come out, right? So it's,
Mm-hmm.
hey, what are we going to say in the beginning? Oh, I didn't see it, and I've been married 10 years. Well, it doesn't mean, the other flags haven't been coming. So it's in the beginning, you are the best thing. And they
Right.
need to see you all the time. It is
Mm-hmm.
like, they've never met anyone. You're their soulmate. They've never met anyone, and they have to spend every minute of the day with you, right? And this is actually one of the first signs of control. Are you
Mm-hmm.
willing to give up going to yoga because they want to come over for dinner? They're
Yes.
starting to test you. So, even though it's like loving and showering and, puppies and roses, it is also just these little tiny things, because that seems on the surface of they just want to spend so much time and so do I. No, that's control. So how we test
Right.
is we actually dial it down and go, you know what? I really can't give up yogurt this week, and see how they react. If they get upset, they blame you, they judge you, not a good match, right? Again, calling them on these things or slowing down their love bombing thing. If someone really loves you, it's not just a 2 week period. It's like
Right.
forever. So if they can't, and this be like, well, if you don't want to see me, then fine. Okay, well, I just dodged a bullet. Thank you very much, right?
Right.
So, you know, just knowing that that's the beginning of the cycle, but setting that boundary and really testing them, and watch their integrity, watch their trustability. And by integrity, I mean they said they'll be there at 7 o'clock and you're making dinner. They better be there at 7 o'clock instead of 8:30, which is what my last
Mm.
narcissist would always do, right? And then what happens is they come at 8:30 and they're supposed to be there at 7. They're testing you again. How upset
Mm.
will you be?
Mm.
Set a
Mm-hmm.
boundary? Will you say, you know what, I threw out the dinner. Sorry, you're not welcome here? Or will you forgive them? Because if you
Mm-hmm.
are going to forgive them, that's one of the early signs you're a keeper, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to really be careful about that. I often tell my clients that listening to their past relationship stories is very helpful, but
Okay.
I had crazy exes in my past. I'm sure you had crazy exes. What's the difference between you and the new potential date across the table, right? Because again, it's in this world and age, there's a lot of crazy back there, right? So what we are looking for them is, if they say they had a crazy ex, oh, so did I, whatever the story comes at that first coffee date. And your goal is to sit there and go, oh, that must have been so hard to have a crazy ex. What did you learn from it? Right? So if they
Mm-hmm.
come off and they're like, I learned that she's a psychopath, that she's a
Mm-hmm.
and they're going off with anger, they didn't do their work. Like,
Right.
I learned after all of my crazy relationships that I had no boundaries, that I didn't know what NPD
Mm-hmm.
was. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know I was a people pleaser. I just thought I was being nice. I didn't know I was codependent.
Mm-hmm.
All of my accountabilities, no boundaries, because I grew up in a family that wouldn't let you set them. That's what you're looking for when they had a crazy
Mm-hmm.
ex. I did this work. Oh my God, I'm vulnerable because, and that is going to show you if they've really done their work. And so, just guard yourself and protect yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I always say, even if you can't get some background checks if you need to, because believe it or not, these narcissists, they watch these channels and they figure out a way to get craftier and craftier. So it's like sometimes you just gotta go old fashioned and do the
Yeah.
background checks too, But yes,
But
absolutely.
again, it doesn't show up that they're a
That's
psychopath.
you're true. You're right. You're so right. So it's like really almost playing detective. Really like you said, really listening to everything that they say because they're gonna slip up somewhere because they can't help themselves. But it's just a matter of you being able to really focus in and pay attention and not get so caught up in the love bombing phase. Kind of like it's almost like being an observer. I always say when you're dating, you need to kind of be the observer for a moment and not be so into it. I mean, of course, you want to enjoy the moment, but you want to be a slight observer so that way you're not just so wrapped up into it because you can't see the picture if you're in the frame. So yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. You, because again, if you're too close to it, you're, oh my God, I've never been so,
Right.
I mean, how are you possibly going to think straight? But if you think
Exactly.
straight enough to go, I think I'll go to yoga this week, and they get angry, test number one, you failed it. They show up for dinner late, test number two, right? But you keep
Mm-hmm.
track. I tell people journal. I've
Mm-hmm.
36 healing journals, and I
Yeah.
just first date, I'm going to journal what they say, what they think. Because next time, if they change the story and they're gaslighting you, I'm like, hey, what is again? I remember this.
Mhm, I
And,
wrote it down. It was January 1st.
I just felt this really uncomfortable feeling when he was talking to the waitress.
Mm,
Like he
mhm.
not her too close or kept watching her. Write that shit down because then
Yeah.
it happens again or escalates because that's day one, date one, and they're supposed to be on their best behavior. So if you're suspecting weird behaviors, or they say things, come home and write it down, ground yourself, and start to
Yes.
build that list of things that build or break trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what are some manipulation tactics narcissists often use to gain control or influence over their partners?
Well, again, the love bombing, the
Yeah.
gas, right? If we think about gaslighting, um, it's sort of like a lie with a twist, but it's like if you notice the story that they said something and you're like, we just journaled, we remembered you said you're from Kansas. Where's this coming from? Right? Like we remembered. So if it's something that they've said and now you're seeing it different and they deny, I never said that, right? You must be mistaken. I never said that, is the gentle beginning dating gaslighting mythology.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, it's like, you're so crazy. You have the worst memory. Why can't you think of things and remember what I told you? Right. So it becomes an attack
Mm-hmm.
versus at first it's like, oh gosh, denial. Remember Darvo, we're going to deny, we're going
Yes.
to
Yes.
that's what this is. So, if you can learn as much as you can about gaslighting, what it sounds like, what it looks like, and we'll talk more in another question. But it always sort of turns it back to blaming you,
Yes.
right? You're
Yes.
so sensitive. You're so this, you're
Mm-hmm.
remembering it wrong. And then we internalize that as victims and go, oh, I'll try harder. I'll try harder.
Yes.
They're grooming you to try harder is what the deal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely. Now, how can individuals differentiate between healthy confidence and narcissistic grandiosity when getting to know someone new? Because you get to know people, and it's sometimes some people are just really, really confident, and it can sometimes come off maybe narcissistic to some people because sometimes people overuse the term sometimes. But at the same time it's where how do you find that balance between like recognizing that they're just confident versus like this person yeah, it's probably
Right.
a narcissist.
Right. So there's two things you're talking about here, right? Let's be clear. What you're describing is more the grandiose narcissist, the confidence, the
Mm-hmm.
arrogant, I'm the best. I walk in the room, everyone thinks I'm amazing, right? That's the kind that you're describing. And that's where the conflict with confidence comes.
Mm-hmm.
Because if someone just is confident and what is this narcissist here doing? Are they just being confident or are they being arrogant? Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's paying attention to this because the other types of narcissists are not like that. They're not grandiose. They're covert, and a covert
Mm-hmm.
narcissist is going to be shy and quiet and everybody's friend, and everybody loves them. So therefore, you're going to give them a ha ha. You see, they're not a narcissist because they're not grandiose and confident, right? They could be really shy. They could be really quiet. So don't be fooled by this look and search for the confidence. Like, to judge someone's actual confidence versus arrogance, you are looking at them and you're thinking, basically, are they paying attention to me? Because
Mm-hmm.
the arrogance, it's all about them. Again,
Yes.
you're on a date, and I always say, let them talk. You watch, you observe, let them talk. Give them very little information, right? But if you say, whatever factoid, do they ask more questions about it and go, wow, so you spent summers in upstate New York. That must have been so beautiful. Tell me about it. Or do they
Mm-hmm.
just go on to, well, I went to New York once and you know what? Blah, 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 blah. And it turns into a story about them. See, that's how we're
Mm-hmm.
going to start to be alert. The confidence is one thing, but it's sort of like, are they taking over? That's the confidence of stealing the conversation
Mm-hmm.
by turning it into something about them. When you're just like, okay, I guess I won't answer that question. That's a red flag.
Yeah, it's like almost like they insert their self in every situation. It's like, okay, every story that I tell you, you don't have to insert yourself into. Like, it's kind of like sometimes, if it gets, there's one thing to be relatable because we all do it. Someone tells a story, as humans, we want to relate to other human beings, and we usually can in some type of way. And so we'll talk about our experiences once someone shares their experience. It's kind of natural. But when someone always finds a way to insert themselves in
Mhm.
like everything that you say, oh, I got a story for this. Oh yeah, and that happened to me one time. Yeah, and that happened to me too. It's like, okay, all right, guy, dude, something's a little not right here. How come you can relate to everything I say? Like even if it's something so crazy, and you never told me about this before. All of a sudden, you just magically disappeared. All of a sudden about your
But what you're
story.
saying too is that the love bombing is again, I've had people with, like, I have a dog, I'm pretending I'm her. I have a dog with, one white eye and three legs. I had a one-eyed dog with three legs too. Oh my God.
Right. Oh my God. Like I
But
yeah, I have had this, you telling me you had some rare disease that maybe nobody had, maybe like less than 1% of the population. Oh yeah, I've had that before too. Like, okay,
and then they're
well.
giving you advice. Again, there's
Right.
conversation, and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of arrogance, it's not confidence. It looks like confidence because they could
Mm-hmm.
talk, but it really is control. It's
Mm-hmm.
inserting themselves in there. It's taking away really your voice. So what you said is not mattering anymore because theirs is a better story.
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's a really subtle sign that people don't pay attention to. And I'm probably gonna have to make a clip of this particular part of the interview because it's so like, really important for people to recognize those subtle signs because most people just look at it like, okay, well, he's just being relatable. No, not, every time, at this point, like you said, he's trying to take over the show and make it more about him than about you and really understand what you're going through. So yeah, that's a good one.
And
Um,
trust patterns. If it's that person
yeah.
and you're noticing it, you go home and you journal, oh, I kept taking the conversation away. Come,
Mhm.
is this a pattern? Hello,
Mhm.
I didn't remember, and journal about it. I won't remember. So, you know,
Absolutely.
keep track.
Absolutely. Yes, gems. We're gems today. You're throwing all the gems today. So, so our next question is, now, are there certain personality types or vulnerabilities that make someone more susceptible to becoming involved in a narcissistic relationship? Now, you mentioned kind of one already with having the family dynamics of being around narcissists. That you may have not even realized at the time you were being raised by a narcissist. But are there some other maybe patterns that make people more susceptible to having narcissists in their realm or their world?
Well, I like to say, like, we're good narc bait. Like if we have these things, like it's
Okay.
just that when they are evaluating someone's supply, what do they offer me, what can I get away with them, just sort of,
Mm,
those sort of things. So when they're looking at that, they are looking for these weaknesses, and our
mm,
story tells the weakness. Like if we are sitting there and first date, and my ex-husband was a narcissist, and you're going on and on and on, right? They're going to go, oh, he cheated on you 15 times, but you stayed. Point, right? You
mm,
hero
mhm,
story. I believe in marriage and I'm loyal. They're going, I can cheat, right? So our story is going to
mhm.
reveal a lot of this stuff, and they know how to ask us the right kind of questions. So, being a codependent. And this is something that people very often sort of mistake it, but it's putting other people's needs before your own, right?
Yes.
narcissists are takers and we're givers. So we're a perfect match. So they're looking for traits in your stories that show that you help others and you're so kind and la 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 la, right? Empaths who are sensitive to other people can easily be manipulated. My last narcass was always crying. And I thought, oh
Wow.
my God, he's so sensitive. This is before I knew about it. I was like, oh, I never knew a man that cried. Oh, he must love his kid so much, right? Manipulation, manipulation. But as an empath, I could feel it and I could react to it. And that's what he was looking for. Do I react to his trauma story? Am I good bait to go, oh, it's okay. You love your children, right? Whatever it is. Am I there to believe his side of the story without any proof or evidence yet? Right? That's where the empaths come in. People pleasers and people without boundaries are favorite snacks for narcissists, right? People pleasers are, I'll do for everyone. It kind of ties to codependency, but it is, I'll do it all. I'll do 150% because I'm that girl. I can do it all and I'll be home and have dinner on the table by 5, right? So it is looking at what supply you're going to offer. Um, narcissists prefer snacking on people who are very forgiving. So spiritual people are often targets. Therapists are very often targets because, well, if something wrong with me, wouldn't they know? Like they say that, right? So you've got this sort of thing, right? If you don't have boundaries, again, they're going to test them. They're going to they're going to show up for dinner 2 hours late. And if you kick them out, they're going to say she's got strong boundaries. You're not going to be good narc bait. But if you sit there and go, oh, it's okay. I know you were late because you had an excuse, but now we're going to keep track and we're going to remember it for next time, right? You do get a pass. You can be late. You can have a flat tire. But if it's a pattern of it and they're just being disrespectful, that's what you're paying attention to. The other part, I have a chapter in my book, which is something I think people need to understand. I call it's the chapter on rich and poor narcissists. So a rich narcissist is always looking for someone beneath them that they can control. Usually, very beautiful, very smart in their own way, successful in their own way, to give them arm candy. That's what they're looking for, is the show. They're looking for someone that's going to make them look better, but keep their mouth quiet, right? And so the rich narcissist is looking at that, but a poor narcissist is literally looking for all those empaths and codependents and happy people with money so that they can get it. So they're either, going to promise you the world when they're rich narcissists and I'll give you the world on a silver platter, and you believe it, and or you end up with someone who is there and they take your house and they take everything from you. And I've seen clients with both directions. So it's important to not only know the flaws in us, like again, codependency, this, right? But we also have to know our wounds. If we have fear, anger wounds, sort of something like that, right? If we have fears or shame, they can tap into that and control us in a minute. Unbeknownst to me, I had abandonment wounds that I was always afraid they would leave me because my parents told me, you're never going to find someone, you'd be lucky to get somebody. So they're never going to stay, they're going to leave me, which made me pick people, and did a lot of work to figure this out, pick the wrong people. If I'm just going in there with a lens of you're going to leave me, I'm going to pick someone and settle for them because maybe based on that, they won't leave me. So knowing that you have an abandonment wound and healing it, you can't, deal with that. If you're afraid of taking care of yourself, you got fears financially, narc bait, I'll take care of you until I don't. Right. And so knowing and healing these wounds are going to help you be stronger and more resistant to the vulnerabilities that they can exploit.
Absolutely. No, I totally 100% agree with that for sure. Now, what role does gaslighting play in narcissistic relationships? And we kind of gave it away a little bit early, but you were mentioned too that you're going to go into it a little bit more. So how can individuals recognize and respond to it effectively?
Well, again, it's a lie with a twist to sort of turn it around and blame you. But it is the biggest flag to look out for. But you have to learn what it is. Go on Pinterest, look for examples of gaslighting, look at what it sounds like, feels like,
Mhm.
and tastes like, so that you're not blinded by, you're too sensitive. Well, I am sensitive, but no one should ever say you're too sensitive, right? That's just
Mhm.
right. But I have 4 examples that I want to read to you because I think it helps understand it.
Yes,
This
please.
is one of them. I wouldn't have said that if you didn't provoke me. That's just normal gaslighting, but it also could be like a normal line in a fight, right? But it
Mhm.
deflects the victim blame on the victim, right? It's turning it
Mhm.
your fault that I was a jerk. Right? Like what, where has that come? Because I complained or something, right? But
Uh-huh.
it makes the victim believe that they brought this on themselves. Right. So it's twisted because now all of a
Mhm.
sudden you go, am I the narcissist? Did I do something wrong? When they're doing this with one line to twist your brain, right? How about this one? You deliberately misinterpreted what I said, right? Now we're casting the blame on the victim again by not reading the narcissist's mind. Like, I should have known that. How? Right? But it also says that we have a distorted, warped intent of what
Mhm.
they were trying to do. Right? No, I saw it. I believe it. You said it was different yesterday. This, I have it in my journal, right? But you're sitting there, you're looking at the reasons of why they're doing that. You know how I feel about that, and you did it anyway. So the way I reacted is your fault. Very similar to the other
Mhm.
one, right? But now
Mhm.
it's back to full on your fault. Um, that never happened. And this is denying the victim's memories, right? There's so many millions and millions of examples that you need to understand that if you have been in a relationship where you were gaslit, you need to do the work to heal that, because it creates shame wounds and fear wounds and all kinds of other things. Like, I'm not good enough. I guess I'll settle
Mhm.
for this crumb, right? No one
Mhm.
else will want me because of the past. So you
Mhm.
have to heal the wounds that come from gaslighting. And that's to learn better boundaries. That's to, learn to, because you weren't allowed to set them if you were with a narcissist. So you've got to learn and get better.
Absolutely. Yeah, 1000%. And thank you for those examples, because sometimes you need those examples just so you can kind of get a feel of what it actually, what it looks like, so we're good,
Mhm.
so thank you. Now, can you provide some other examples of how setting and maintaining boundaries can help individuals protect themselves from becoming entangled in narcissistic dynamics?
Right. So the important part here is boundaries are a narcissist kryptonite. Think about it, right? I mean, it's really like it's the best test because they're going to fail, right? And so they don't listen to your boundaries, and they get really mad that you broke their boundaries, but they never actually set them. So they're always screaming, "You broke my boundaries. Why? What did I do? You never said it." To actually set a boundary is not to wish it in your head. It's not, I wish you'd stop putting the toilet seat, put it down, right? That's a wish, right? To say, don't put the damn toilet seat down is a boundary, or
Right.
put the toilet seat down. Like, and so a narcissist mind, they are warping this and blaming you and twisting it so that it's your fault. And so again, it's just kind of learning that. But in the beginning, you have to set boundaries. Okay, be here by 7 or dinner's not on the table, or whatever it is you are watching. I use this
Mhm.
example all the time. First date, ready? So we're
Okay.
on first date, we're at the bar, and we're sitting there having a drink, and you've chatted on text for a little while, and you're like so excited to meet them, and you sit down and you say, I'm so happy to meet you. I can't believe we're finally getting together. This is lovely, but I forgot I have something. I only have about 2 hours, so let's have the most fun we can have. And then you sit and you have your drink and you have your 2 hours. And as it's coming to the end, okay, I've got to head out soon. Oh, come on, just have one more drink. Just
Right.
have one more
Come on,
drink.
you could hang out a little bit longer. I'm sure you got a little time.
Not a boundary listener, right? So you are testing, you are constantly testing. If they ask you, where do you want to go for dinner? And these are just basic 101 dating questions. Well, I think I'd like Italian. I don't feel like Italian. Let's go to Mexican. And they just go to Mexican. Why'd you even ask me? But here's where you test it and go, you know what? Let's go to Mexican tonight, but can we do Italian next time? And they say,
Mhm.
sure. And now next time comes and you go, last time you said we get Italian. Well, I don't really feel like that. They're not listening to their promises. Their integrity's in question here, and they're lying to you. So
Mm-hmm.
all of those things are really surefire ways to test their boundaries, but you're setting them on them and you're seeing what they're setting on you. And sometimes their boundaries are more like control. So you're
Mm-hmm.
going, okay, like a normal boundary is some sort of level of don't do this is to be in my life. You have to follow this rule. But at the same time, a narcissist is sort of like coming out of the gate, whoop, whoop, whoop. And it's not boundaries, it is control. So be alert and be very wary to watch that and write it down when you get home.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure that is going to help a lot of women, a lot of people, because how many of us actually write things down? Like, if we actually wrote things down in a lot of our previous narcissistic relationships, we probably wouldn't be in the same place. But of course, we didn't have the knowledge there, but now we do. So now that you have this information, utilize it. Like you said, when you have these experiences, write them down. And it's just being in that observer seat and just taking note of everything that's happening so that when the shit does hit the fan, you could be like, oh yeah, I remember this day. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I just
Is that
pulled, for the people who are on the podcast not looking at us at the moment, but I just pulled a journal off of my shelf behind me that it's called the Trust Processing Journal, and it is
nice?
for you to get home from your date and journal about it. But it is also all of these trust factors. How does trust get built? We have to know
Mm,
that, right? So, having them be accountable. Are they coming when they say they will? Do they
yes.
respect your boundaries? Do they, share their boundaries without being angry? Healthy living is not going to the gym because we're like, oh, they go to the healthy gym. Yeah, yeah. No. Are they staying present and engaged? Do they
Mm,
remember the things about you and check in with you? Are they cooperative? Do they express their feelings in a nice way and, want to work together? Do they lie? Do they gaslight? These are the things. Do they have integrity? Like, there's a whole list here. It's crazy how many things we can do to test their integrity or to watch for it. And
mm.
so that's how we determine if someone is safe or not safe, whether they're a narcissist or not.
Absolutely. And we need to, I will definitely have the link put into the comments below, comment section below. So that way people can get a hold of that journal because I want one myself actually. And I'm sure so many of our listeners are going to want that journal. So yes, absolutely. We'll make sure that they have access to get that. My next question is, are there any early signs or behaviors that may indicate a narcissist is not capable of genuine empathy or emotional reciprocity? Like,
Mhm.
and it's kind of building up on a lot of things we talked about already, but is there any signs that you can kind of see like, oh, this person just has no empathy whatsoever? It's like, or emotional reciprocity whatsoever. You just know, like, you can just feel it. Or is there ways you can kind of like pinpoint it early on where you can be like, yeah, this time to end this real quick before it gets
Right.
better
And,
faster.
those come down to what are you going to take? How much of
Mm,
this are you going to tolerate? Because they're going to have all these signs, right? Again, early, they're on their best behavior. So
yeah.
whenever this happens, we start to journal, we start to keep track. This is for us, not for them.
Yes.
And this is for us to understand. Again, do they remember? If we look back at the trust journal, do they remember we had that big meeting? Check in with us. Are
Yeah.
they there and present for us? So, that shows empathy,
Hmm.
emotional reciprocity. My brain wouldn't go there.
I know. I know. Same thing. I had a little tongue twister too.
Not in a funny way. Sorry. But are they nice to the waitress? Are they nice to other people? Listen
That's a good one.
stories and see. That's how you're seeing if they've got integrity and
Yes.
if empathy for a waitress and they're just looking at their butt or they're going, ah, they're just so stupid. I'm not giving them a tip.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's kind of crazy, but you can hear it in their stories and you can hear.
Yes.
I went on
Absolutely.
a couple dates like 10 years ago, and that's it. And when I went there, this one guy was like talking about how he had a rental house and he had people sign a lease, but then you know what? My wife wants a divorce, so I want the house back and screw them. I had to evict them. And I'm like, this is not a person with integrity. Like,
Yeah.
gave them a lease. That's give them their year. You screwed up and you didn't know you were going to get divorced, but listen to those stories.
Mm-hmm.
Ask more questions. If you see something and hear something, ask a question, go a little deeper. So did you really say that you're kicking them out on the streets when they had a lease? And yeah, I did, and I deserve that place. Okay, well, you deserve me to go now. Check, please. Right? You're
Right.
looking for the little things that show
Mm-hmm.
us if they've got integrity. There's no, like, you don't go, hey, what, how, never believe anyone who tells you that they have integrity. My ex-husband used to tell me he was the most integritous person in the world and all, and I believed him. But then, retrospectively looking back at, he used to steal computers. When he moved out, there were 15 brand new computers that he'd stolen. That is not someone with integrity. And when I
Oh.
would question him, he'd have all his excuses, and I'd sit there and go, oh, okay. But in my heart, I knew that wasn't someone with integrity, right? So what
Yeah.
is this person doing? Do they help the little old lady walk out of the restaurant and hold the door for her? Small signs, but we are watching. That's
Mm-hmm.
all we want them to know, is we are watching every move. And that's how you're going to know, because the tests are them showing up, them doing what they say they will, and them being emotionally vulnerable with you, that you see that they have empathy, and
Absolutely.
checking in with you. If they knew you had something horrible happen, are they still checking in with you 2 weeks later after your dog
Mm.
died? um, Whatever it is,
Yeah.
you can test and see it. But your question really is not, what do they do if they don't have it? It's, are you going to stay?
Mm.
And loving
Absolutely.
yourself enough to know that no matter how cute their butt is or how good they look on paper, I don't want somebody that's going to treat me like this, because this is the beginning and this is the fun part. I don't think so.
Right. Especially if it's happening early. It's like, if this is happening, within a few months or so, imagine what's going to get like within a year, or two or more. It's just going to just get more catastrophic. So absolutely,
Mhm.
get out early if you can, as much as possible, as soon as possible. Now, finally, my last question is, how can individuals trust their instincts and intuition when
Mhm.
it comes to identifying potential narcissistic behavior, especially if they have a history of being drawn to toxic relationships? Because sometimes, it's like you don't know if whether you're just being overly hyperly vigilant, or if you are really, it's like you have when you've been in these relationships before, you have a real hard time with trusting yourself, because you don't want to be this overly analytical person that's overly analyzing everything someone says or does, but at the same time, you don't want to be naive again either. So it's like, where do we, draw that line, somewhere in
Mhm.
the middle with
Absolutely.
trusting?
And again, trust is not only learning to trust them, but trusting ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't have trust for others unless we learn to trust ourselves, which is trusting your instincts, right? That
Yeah.
didn't feel right. What am I going to do about it? Is sort of the trust scenario there. Um,
Yeah.
to really trust yourself in any relationship is to do the work to figure out what your wounds were that made you
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable in the last one, right? Again, I was a people pleaser. I had no boundaries. Blah, blah, blah. We can make all these things up and say, I got to heal that, because they're vulnerabilities that could be used again, right? Another narcissist is going to tap into it. Learn to set boundaries, and not just learn it in a book, but set them with the Starbucks lady. Excuse me, I said extra cream. Could I get a little more? And you're sitting there and you're testing, asking people, for what you said. Your steak comes and you said medium and it's cooked all like rock, send it back. Have the courage to sit there and try that with strangers, and then you'll
Mm-hmm.
end up being stronger when you're with somebody. Because if you just come out of the gate and you've never set a boundary, and this person is doing something that you're questioning, and you never set a boundary, it isn't going to work. You got to practice.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to do the work. There's an amazing book out there called Better Boundaries Workbook. I love it. You sit there and you go, what are my patterns? How did I do this before? How come it didn't work? What should I do now? And you're sitting there, you're doing the work, right? Learn how to protect your emotional heart by not jumping off the cliff into the love bombing pool of happiness, right? And just go,
Yeah.
you know what? This is great, but I'm slowing it down, and
Mm-hmm.
I get to be in charge. Like,
Yes.
even though you want it, if they're really going to be there, they're going to be there, right?
Hmm.
And as I said, healing the wounds of fear, because you're so much more controllable. And I say building a trust policy. How will I trust them? Are they showing me things that are trust builders, or are they breaking my trust? I have these two little balls, which I'm gonna show you. I have a little trust good thing and a red ball we're holding up for a trust breaker. And you're sitting there and you're keeping track. Are they more red balls on your shirt? Then you shouldn't give them your trust, right? Trust is earned. And I teach a class in
Yes.
trust now, and I'm like, how did you trust people? And I would say, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Tracy. I had no trust like skills to say that wasn't trustworthy. So you've got to start to look at what you've done before and learn how to fix it so that if you do come across one of these people, you trust yourself that you're not going to stay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that was so amazing. That was a lot. And it was also very refreshing to just have you, spread this information in a way to where women are going to be able to really get the tools that they need, really have true examples of what it looks like to go through these things early on as soon as possible. Because, we know that, of course, the love bombing phase is very real. However, if you have this information, you are more likely to catch it, the subtle signs, very early, a lot earlier than you would have if you did not have this information. So I want to thank you so much for coming to do this podcast. And please let our audience know where they can find you through your social media platforms.
Sure. So I'm Tracy A. Malone everywhere. So YouTube and Netflix, YouTube and
Hey,
Instagram.
you maybe you're manifesting.
Exactly. You never know.
Yeah.
Uh, Everywhere, again, it's there. My website is Narcissist Abuse Support. In the beginning, I think it said Narcissistic. I think someone owned that
Oh,
domain,
okay. Okay.
the one I could buy, Narcissist Abuse Support. And so
Okay.
you can find everything, all my social links, my podcasts, my YouTube channel, all my social stuff, and the plethora of like 700 pages of how to learn about narcissists.
Nice. So thank you again so much for sharing this information. I'm also going to post in the link comments below where you can reach her, all of her social media links and everything, so you guys will have access to that. But once again, thank you so much, and thank you everyone who listened today. I hope you got the value that you needed today, because it was a lot of value. So I hope you even go back and listen to this again, so that you can soak it all up as much as possible, as much as you need to. Once again, thank you so much. And you guys have a blessed day. And until the next podcast, peace out.